Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Golden Ratio Podcast. I am Jen, GR Mom, joined as always by GR Dad.
As always, in person this time. We got to stop saying as always if I'm sitting right here because we're going to have to say live and in person. Now sitting next to me is me. Hi.
It's been like a month since we've been in the country at the same time.
To be in a condition to be podcasting.
I think I got back from Ukraine and then I was back for one full day and 2 partial days. It may have even been the next day you left for Germany.
I know, and I scheduled that trip just after you got back. Like, oh no.
And then you get back from Germany and I left the next day to go to Maryland. So I guess I was in the country, but I was not with you. So thank you guys for enduring the dearth of podcast. We have an awful lot to talk about.
I got so used to bachelorism that as soon as you came back, I got overwhelmed. I was like, I got to go to Germany.
I need to get out of the country. It's so much. I'll go back to the war zone anytime and go if you need.
I mean, I'm sure you'll react the same way. You'll come home and be like, gotta go.
So our plan, and we'll see how strong our endurance for podcasting is that we're going to give you all the dog updates and related normal podcast stuff in this podcast. And then we're going to record a bonus podcast where I tell you all about my trip to Ukraine. And Ingo will tell you about his trip to Germany. And you guys, for longtime listeners of the pod, may remember our discussion of Germans eating raw pork. And I will just tell you that Ingo did this when he was in Germany. So we're going to check in on the status of his brain worms.
Raw pork, warm eggs.
Ugh, gross. So anyway, normally we just do those bonus pods for subscribers. And you can totally become one at Patreon. Sign up and you get bonus pods. But this one we're going to release for everybody.
What?
The Ukraine trip one and
I'm kidding.
Here,
I have
Ukraine
no idea.
trip, everybody Germany. That's gonna be subscribers only because it's a little gross. You gotta really want it to hear about that.
Well, yours will be half an hour and mine will be 2 minutes. Here's a list of weird foods. No further questions.
I know, but we'll let you ramble in yours. And so then yours will be half an hour and you'll just talk about 2 things. And mine will be half an hour and I'll be like, so I spent 10 days in a war zone. And the end.
Well, we will both work to make neither of those extremes true.
Okay, but this is kind of a regular pod where we catch up on everything. And we'll begin by saying, as you would say, Ingo, apropos of nothing, the cocktail of the week this week is Radio Silence. That's the name of the drink, Radio Silence.
I like it.
Dry gin, Campari, and Lillet Blanc.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
One of these days, I want to have a debate with you over whether a martini is a cocktail, but even a drink. I keep seeing these people be like, my favorite drink is a dry martini. I take some vodka, I put some ice in it, and then I strain the ice, and that's my martini. It's like, you're just drinking vodka.
How about gin?
It could be gin, but it's either, right? Like, I mean, gin at least has flavor, but vodka, you might as well just be injecting it.
There's some vermouth sometimes involved.
But not in these dry ones. Everyone's just like, I just put a lemon slice on it, and then I'm done.
Wave the vermouth bottle over the glass.
What is that? I don't understand how people think that's not just doing shots of vodka.
Cold gin.
It's just cold gin. You can't. It's Martini's marketing department should be getting a raise.
I mean, like on the flip side of that is the sort of martini trend of like the early aughts, the oddies.
Sex in the City time.
So it was kind of around that time. Maybe a little after that, but where it's just there'd be all these random cocktails put in martini glasses, and so it'd be like, it's an espresso martini. And it's like, it's not at all a martini. There's no gin in it. There's no vermouth in it. But it's in a martini glass.
That's true.
You know?
Like a cranberry martini, and it's actually just like cranberry vodka.
I mean, it would be like Godiva chocolate liqueur and Kahlua and, Bailey's and whatever.
It just was the shape of the glass.
It was just the shape of the glass.
I got to say, Martini brand is so powerful that it includes multitudes.
I think this was like that sort of martini phase was just before the kind of craft cocktail resurgence of like the early teens.
Do you call them aughts or knots?
I call them the aughts, though I do like the naughties. The Brits sometimes call it the naughties, which I think is really nice.
Yeah, I like
Yeah.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
so-
think I get some honorary Britishness by being a student at Cambridge, but I
I just rolled my eyes so
So
hard, my
hard.
jaw dislocated.
but I have not fully embraced it. I feel like a poser when I talk like a Brit.
Good. Keep that. That's healthy. Brits should feel like that too.
No, they're allowed to say all those words we're not allowed to say
Not
here.
if they're all smarmy about it. Oh, they can definitely say the words. Yes,
Yeah.
fair enough. Fair enough.
All right, Ingo. Do you want to have that martini discussion now, or should I?
No,
put
I
it
think that's all I got anyway. That was my discussion.
I'm going to put it under
Apropos of nothing, Jen.
ramblings martini ? And we'll talk about it later.
Cool. I got to do some research.
I
All right.
have 5 items in administrative corner.
Oh, I love administrative corner, and this is like my dream day of administrative corner.
Okay.
5 items?
Yeah.
I might add a 6th.
Okay. It's going to be an epic.
It could be one of your 5 though, because we do think alike a lot of times.
Yes. The first is sent to us by friend of the squad, Miranda. It is an update on a previous item we discussed in Administrative Corner. The last of the 43 monkeys that fled the South Carolina lab return, lured by peanut butter and jelly sandwiches.
Oh, selling yourself out so cheap.
We say to Nugget sometimes, like, she still has to be crated when we leave the house because she eats the furniture.
And the walls.
And the walls and everything. And she loves the crate, actually, but we need to make sure she gets in there. And so we give her a chicken snack, and I'm always like, will you trade your freedom for this chicken snack? And she's like, with glee.
No
I will
hesitation.
trade it. Yep. So here's from the New York Post, venerable journalistic institution. They do always have the deets, though. They tell you the stuff the other ones don't. Is it always true? No. But it's in there.
But it's more interesting.
And then there were none. After 2 months of
Aw.
unfettered freedom, 4 escaped monkeys have been captured and returned to the South Carolina Animal Medical Research Center they cut and run from back in November.
I'd say it's fettered freedom. I think they're using words they don't understand. But anyway.
The 4 rhesus macaques, do you know how to say that? I hate monkeys, so I don't know.
I've heard it either way, and I have no judgment.
We're going to call them monkeys.
Rhesus.
Rhesus monkeys, not Reese's Pieces, were the last of a larger group of 43 female monkeys that hightailed it on November 6th after an employee at Alpha Genesis, just so fucking sinister sounding, intentionally left the door open to their enclosure. Good job, employee.
Wait, intentionally? He was a
Mhm.
sleeper agent?
I think she.
She was a sleeper agent?
Yeah.
Good job. It should say former employee.
That
Or
does
maybe
it?
it doesn't, but maybe that was her whole job, was to keep the cage locked.
Yeah. Security guards for the company try that again. Security guards
Coax.
for the company managed to coax most of their primates back inside the facility, offering them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and other edible treats. The final 4 monkeys had been living in a nearby woods.
Come on, monkeys. Resist.
The group survived intense rainstorms in the area's first snowfall since 2018 while on the loose.
And then succumbed to a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, the low-value snack.
Alpha Genesis breeds the primates to sell to medical facilities and research labs all around the world. In 2022, 11 monkeys escaped the same center through a broken chain link fence, according to the Department of Agriculture.
In my head now, they just allowed themselves to be recaptured because they needed some of the equipment that they know is in the lab for step 2.
I like that.
They've all done a lot of training and outdoor survival techniques and forged some bonds, and now the next step will be devastating.
I mean, that is what we worried about the first time.
Well, this time they've had time to, train.
Yeah, and plan in secret.
And
that we
plan.
observe,
They don't need anyone accidentally leaving a crate open anymore. They've got their lasers.
All right, item number 2. This was sent to us by friend of the squad, S. Glassme, but a while ago, and I just happened to see it in the last few weeks.
Yeah.
And so even though it's an older story, we're going to talk about it. This is from May 2024, but it is a fish scandal.
Okay.
Or a fish issue.
Is it
A
official?
fishu. A fishu.
I'm going to wait for the official word on it.
Possibility teens 101-pound catfish catch will lead to rule changes and new reward category. This is from Dave Golowinski of the Columbus Dispatch. What follows sounds like a broken record. Widely trumpeted is that J. Lynn Parker's 101.11 pound blue catfish caught under a float attached to a bank line last month on the Ohio River has been accepted as a state record under long-standing rules devised by the sanctioning outdoor writers of Ohio.
Okay.
All right. So Jalen Parker caught a 101-pound blue catfish.
I mean, that's news in and of itself. Someone catching a 110-pound catfish.
101.
101. Sorry, it's a guac,
State record.
or it's a
Bigger than guacamole.
feta plus a zola.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insiders are quietly discussing the possibility of revising the rules. In other words, a decent chance still exists that the record book will be reconfigured when the sanctioning writers group meets in August.
Wait, you can't revise the rules backwards.
Mhm. The addition of a category for fish caught on bank, trot, and float lines is being considered, meaning Parker's legally caught catfish could end up as a record separate from fish caught with a rod and a reel.
Okay.
I guess they're
He
jealous.
still gets a prize.
Yeah.
Wait, the rod and reel people are like, oh, it's not real fishing.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly right.
I've never caught a catfish of 101 pounds, but that's not real fishing. Seems like it's real enough, buddy.
No kidding.
That's giant.
It is extremely huge. Now, let me just put forth this theory. The previous record was a 96-pound blue catfish caught by Chris Rolfe with a rod and a reel.
Okay.
Chris Rolfe, we do not hear from in here, but maybe fans of Chris Rolfe or people like Chris Rolfe are like, we don't like that Jalen Parker, a girl, has broken the record using a different method.
That makes some sense. And that rod and reel is much harder to do and takes a lot of skill to turn the little reel.
Girl, I mean,
she's probably 101 pounds. She's normal looking.
She has braces. She looks like she's in high school. I don't know how old she is. She's a teen, though.
Right.
So this teenage girl breaks the record of this dude using a different method. And they're like, we probably need another category because we can't have teenage girls breaking the records of like
us
men
fragile
doing
men.
I'm just speculating. I don't know what the motivation is, but I will note that a teenage girl broke the record. So
I will note that your experience with sexism, subtle and otherwise, is much vaster than mine. So, if your spidey sense is tingling, then, explain.
I just have this feeling that
I think it's right. I'm not disagreeing at all, by the way.
People like to change rules when the rules allow women to do things better than men sometimes, and they think that if women do things better than men, that it's unfair, and then they want to change the rules so that can't happen.
That is totally a historical pattern, right? That is with all fields of expertise. But go ahead. That you're exact. I hadn't even focused on that. That makes good sense to me. And again, you can't change the rules retroactively. If they try to do that, then it's anarchy. What are we even doing here, Fisher people?
I have another fish scandal item sent by a friend of the squad, but I do not have noted down who the friend of the squad was. But this is an article in PLOS One, which is an academic journal that I have published a couple papers in. Yeah,
this is actually much better than the other one. PLOS One, PLOS, right?
PLOS, open source. It's PLOS.org. You can see my papers there. You can see other papers. It's kind of like for academic people like Science or Nature or the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, which we call PNAS, even though you could probably pronounce that acronym another way.
I love that acronym. That's the other one I was talking about. PLOS One is a great neutral acronym that you can't really turn into something that sounds like the male anatomy.
PNAS is a little harder. And so PLOS...
Did you go? I'm going to leave that unremarked upon.
PNAS.
Nope, I'm just going to leave that one unremarked upon.
That's great. So PLOS One is similar in that like you can be in any field of science and submit here. There's a pretty high bar to clear to get published here, but it's not as high as Science or Nature. Science or Nature you have to, in addition to like your work being very solid, it needs to significantly advance the field in a way. Like that's part of the standard is like, oh, this is a real new discovery that like really brings us forward. Where for PLOS One, it just has to be like good science. And even if it's like a small advance, like that's okay.
And for scientists. These are peer-reviewed journals, so you have to like submit your paper, and it gets reviewed with comments by at least usually three reviewers, and they decide if it's accepted, rejected, and they're like experts, right? They're not just saying this is pretty or this makes me feel a certain way. They're saying this is good science, or this is really suspect and we don't want anything to do with it.
And they always tell you stuff you have to fix.
Yeah.
And then you fix it and it gets better. That's the ideal. So this is an article in PLOS One, published November 6th, 2024, so fairly recent. And the title of the academic paper is Fishy Business in Seattle, : I love academic papers that start with this way, with a kind of colloquial title and then the actual one. Salmon mislabeling fraud in sushi restaurants versus grocery stores.
Nice. This is a hot topic always with fish.
Mm-hmm. A lot of authors on this paper. Big long list. I mean, there's probably 30 authors on this paper. The lead author is Jewel L. Garcia, and the last author, who's often like the person who led the lab, is Tracy Delgado, and then we can't read everybody else's name in there, but you can go look it up. So here's the abstract.
Fishy business.
Fishy business in Seattle. Salmon is the most commonly consumed fish in the United States of America, (USA). And the mislabeling of salmon is a widespread problem. Washington State is a global supplier of wild-caught Pacific salmon, and local salmon mislabeling results in substantial economic, ecological, and cultural impacts. Previous studies in Washington State identified high levels of mislabeled salmon in both markets and restaurants, resulting in local legislation being passed that requires proper labeling of salmon products, including identifying it as wild-caught or farm-raised. Are you with me?
Got it. Following it.
Okay. To investigate whether recent legislative efforts reduced salmon fraud rates, we acquired and genetically barcoded salmon samples from 67 grocery stores and 52 sushi restaurants in Seattle, Washington. Now, I want to give you guys, here's what it looks like in the research lab. You go out and you buy a bunch of sushi.
Yum.
You order a bunch of sushi to the research lab, and then you are going to, you're going to get, some gloves on and, some tweezers. You're going to pick the
you don't eat
salmon out. But, 100% I will tell you as an academic, if we were doing this study, we would get a whole order of sushi, but you don't need all the order of sushi. So you take
just the salmon
part, and you don't need that much salmon.
I'm
to do it, right?
sure you just only get salmon sushi. You only get
Please
the
give me one
roll.
piece of
one unit.
One salmon.
One unit.
Little unit. No, I'm just saying.
Why is this receipt for sushi ships?
Okay, 67 grocery stores, 52 sushi restaurants. They got a whole bunch of salmon. DNA from each salmon sample was isolated, and you need, guys, a tiny amount of salmon to do DNA testing.
You need one scale.
One order of salmon. So what we're going to do is we're going to order. There's 30 people on this paper. So we're going to order for 3 Fridays, everybody come in and we're going to order from
sushi.
15 restaurants. And we're going to take the little 1 cubic centimeter of salmon that's way more than we need. And then what are we going to do? Even if we just get the minimal 1 salmon roll from 15 restaurants that we need, then we all get to sit around and eat the rest of the sushi.
That sounds pretty good.
That's this is how science works, everybody.
If you're lucky.
So
if you're not studying skunks. Okay.
They DNA. I know. We've actually never done this.
We're going to get 30 skunks in this lab, and, we only need a hair from each skunk, so you guys play with the rest.
It's like in mosquito labs where it's you do have to put your arm in the mosquito tank and let them bite you.
What's the upside? There is none.
None.
You don't get sushi. That's ridiculous.
This is better. Okay, so they DNA tested all of the salmon samples from the grocery stores and the sushi restaurants. Our study, conducted from 2022 to 2023, revealed 18% of salmon samples from both grocery stores and sushi restaurants were mislabeled.
That's terrible.
While most samples were acquired during the fall months when wild salmon is in season, we still observed a high rate of mislabeling. Unlike grocery stores, Seattle sushi restaurants often sold farmed salmon mislabeled as wild salmon. Specifically, substitutions of vendor-claimed wild salmon with farmed salmon occurred in 32.3% of sushi restaurant samples compared to 0% of grocery store samples.
Wow.
Additionally, occurrences of wild salmon being substituted with another salmon species wild or farmed, occurred in 38.7% of sushi restaurant samples compared to 11.1% of grocery store samples.
That's really interesting.
All salmon substitutions in sushi restaurants harmed the consumer financially as they were given a cheaper market-priced fish.
Yep.
In grocery stores, however, we did not detect significant economic loss to customers due to salmon mislabeling. Taken together, it's important to continue to develop and enforce legislation in Washington state that prevents salmon fraud and promotes ecologically sustainable fishing practices.
That is really interesting.
That is some good science.
I agree. Let them eat sushi if they're going to come up with this kind of science. It shows that sushi restaurants are shadier than grocery stores.
This project was funded by the Seattle Pacific University Biology Lab Fund.
Great.
And in their acknowledgments, they say, we thank Sue Martin, Sarah Hartman, Megan Sides, and Emma Engel for lab support throughout the project. The study was conducted on the land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish tribe.
That's great.
Yep.
That is Pacific Northwest.
Very, very.
They should do that everywhere.
Okay. Item number 4.
Yay!
I know. This is an epic.
This is great. This is a podcast unto itself. We could just be called
Administrative
Ingo's favorite podcast.
Ingo's dream pod.
Is this
Ingo's
real life?
Mojo Dojo Casa
Oh
pod.
my goodness, no! Without any of those associations.
All right, this is a few people sent me this from the New Zealand Herald, so we're going.
Oh, I love the Kiwis.
Auckland supermarket staffer threatened with pineapple during Trio's alleged shoplifting attempt.
Oh, this is good.
Video footage has captured a Trio's brazen shoplifting attempt at an Auckland supermarket, during which a customer had a grocery item thrown at them and a worker was threatened with a fruit.
Mayhem.
A police spokesperson said they were investigating the Monday afternoon incident involving 3 women at Woolworth's Mount Wellington. The trio allegedly tried to steal a trolley full of items, but their efforts were foiled, and they only made off with a 10-pack of Mountain Dew cans, laundry liquid, and a pineapple.
I want to hear the threat with the pineapple.
One of the women is captured on video throwing a canister of an unidentified grocery item at a customer, hitting them in the shoulder. Could you please put a pin to remind you that I want to tell you a related story about
throwing cans things at people?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm happy to talk about that story.
The same woman then picks up a pineapple from the floor and pretends to throw it at a Woolworths employee. She's like a little fake.
And then keeps it and runs with it.
The video also shows a supermarket trolley worker unsuccessfully attempting to prevent the alleged offender's escape by blocking the exit with a row of trolleys. Just push that big row of carts in front.
Unsuccessfully, though. This is a movie scene.
2 of the women run away, and the third casually walks off.
With their Mountain Dews and laundry detergent and pineapple.
Yeah.
This is a news story, people. What a great little community they have. Yep. This is the news of the day.
The investigation is ongoing.
It's low stakes, high intensity.
Yep. All right, so there you go.
I like it.
Pineapple threat. Do we want to talk about the chucking of cans?
Let's roll right into it. We usually don't talk about current events like this.
I know. So Patriot Front is they're the guys who were at the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally with the tiki torches. They weren't called Patriot Front there, and because that obviously went very bad, that group from Charlottesville splintered and into 2 groups, and the main one is Patriot Front. And they are the like wannabe FBI looking guys who wear like khakis from Kohl's and blue polo shirts and like white gaiters pulled up over their nose and baseball caps and do these like neo-Nazi marches. They also do like a lot of graffiti. They're actually required to like go graffiti and like put white nationalist stickers up and stuff. I study them in my work, and they were trying to do a rally in Columbus, Ohio, and they showed up and people started throwing canned vegetables at them, and then they called the police, and they're like, I can't believe that we're encountering this level of violence when all we're trying to do is demonstrate.
Yeah, I think that's great. That is and I didn't see anywhere in the reports that that anyone who threw a can got in trouble. which I would love if this were seen as legitimate kind of self-defense.
They generally don't announce when their rallies are going to be because they're very worried about being doxxed. Unicorn Riot, which is a sort of activist journalist organization, hacked their Discord server a couple of years ago, and I have read every message in there. And one of the problems they have with retaining members is that they're really afraid of being identified as members of Patriot Front because, like, you're probably going to get fired from your job if you're a neo-Nazi.
Goodness.
So they're really afraid of it.
Yeah.
And they got in a lot of trouble. I want to say it was like 2020-ish. It must have been 2021. Maybe it was 2019. I'm just thinking because there wasn't pride parades during COVID, but they showed up to like the Coeur d'Alene Pride Parade in the back of a Ryder truck.
Yeah, I remember that.
And someone saw something and said something. They called the police and they're like, I saw a bunch of like paramilitary guys with like shields piling into the back of a Ryder truck and going to Pride. You might want to check it out. And then the cops pulled over the Ryder truck and arrested like all of them. And I think actually a lot of them got off because like you are allowed to be in a Ryder truck even if you're a neo-Nazi. They were charged with like terrorist threats.
I don't
or something.
know though. I think it's transporting people in the back of a van is not legal.
Oh well, I don't think that's what they were charged with, right? They were charged with.
That's what I would get them for. This is
smart.
the tax evasion, kind of thing. But anyway.
Anyway, legal advice, not formal legal advice, but legal thoughts from a non-lawyer, me, is that you probably will get arrested if someone catches you throwing a can of peas at a neo-Nazi, but not a lot of people are going to judge you negatively for it.
Agreed. It is the morally right thing to do, even if it's leads to
An assault charge?
a problem.
So,
I think it's battery, but anyway.
Oh, what's the difference?
Assault is placing someone in fear of being whacked, and battery is whacking them. So if you hit someone from behind, you shouldn't really get an assault charge.
Oh, that's fascinating.
But they're often together, right? If you're hitting from the front, then it's both, right?
The first joke that like a classmate told me that I thought was really funny was this guy named Phil, and he was in 6th grade with me, and he told me this joke that said, "What did the popcorn get arrested for? Assault and buttery."
Buttery, that's pretty good.
Really funny.
That's pretty good.
That was very funny.
All right. You roll your eyes at my...
I was 12. All right. The last item in Administrative Corner from the Baltimore Banner. Startup indie newspaper in Baltimore. Does great work. Highly recommend if you're a resident of the DMV to add into your rotation, especially if you want like an alternative to the Washington Post for local news. Baltimore Banner. This is from them. The heist of 100,000 eggs in Pennsylvania becomes a whodunit that police have yet to crack. So we've done nut heists. We've done fish
We've done all
heists.
sorts of heists.
I love a good heist. This is the egg heist. Antrim Township, Pa. The heist of 100,000 eggs from the back of a trailer in Pennsylvania has become a whodunit that police have yet to crack.
How many eggs?
100,000 eggs.
Wow.
And since eggs are like $5 a piece now, that's like $500,000.
I know. It's amazing. Eggs are gold now.
Did you get it that they said the police have yet to crack the case?
Oh, I thought it was a yoke.
4 days after... I'm so upset you said that. 4 days after the theft that left law... let's try it again. 4 days after the theft that law enforcement say could be tied to the sky-high cost of eggs, no leads have come in. We're relying on leads from people in the community, so we're hoping that somebody knows something and that they'll call us and give us some tips. Police are also following up with any possible witnesses.
What is it? That's like the universal post of the police. Like, we don't really want to... We're not... we can't figure this out. Can anyone figure this out for me?
In my career, I've never heard of 100,000 eggs being stolen. This is definitely unique, said this person, Trooper First Class Megan Fraser, who has a dozen years on the job. Do you see what they did there? It's a dozen years on the job.
Yeah, but they also miss the fact that it's like, I don't know how to investigate thefts.
Bird flu is forcing farmers to slaughter millions of chickens a month, pushing U.S. egg prices to more than double their cost in the summer of 2023, and it appears there may be no relief in sight with Easter approaching. The average price for a dozen eggs nationwide hit $4.15 in December. That's not quite as high as the $4.82 set 2 years ago, but the Agriculture Department predicts egg prices are going to soar another 20% this year. The 100,000 eggs were snatched from the back of a Pete and Jerry's Organics distribution trailer on Saturday at 8:40 p.m., 20 minutes from Hagerstown and an hour from Baltimore. They are worth $40,000, which means the crime is a felony.
What's that? They're actually, what is it, 40 cents an egg? Is that what they're?
Yeah, 40 cents an egg.
That isn't retail.
So here's the thing. Eggs need to be refrigerated in this country, unlike you people in Europe who don't refrigerate your eggs. Those eggs are in a refrigerated truck. How do you take 100,000 eggs out of a truck? You got to put them into another truck.
Yeah. I mean, unless you want to get caught, right? That first truck is identifiable.
That's quite an operation.
I don't know. Maybe you wait for them all to hatch into little chickies. That's not how science works. I know. That's not how eggs work either, thank goodness. Maybe they are boiling them really fast. Somebody should look for a big pot of water.
That's interesting.
But 100,000 eggs, that's a lot of boiling.
Okay, so we're going to try to do some math here. So I just looked it up, and if you get like a carton, like not like a dozen egg carton, but like a box.
Oh.
Right, of eggs.
How many is in there?
15 dozen.
15
dozen eggs. Okay. 15 dozen eggs, which is 180 eggs.
Wow, that's a full refrigerator full of eggs. Yeah.
So I guess it's like 3 dozen stacked 5 high. Gives you kind of Amazon box size.
That's got to be heavy.
180 eggs. So we're going to divide 100,000 by that. And did I do that right? That math right? So that's 80. That's definitely not right.
No.
No. Okay.
How many is in a box?
So it's 555 of those cases. So 555 Amazon-y style boxes.
So what's that? There's 200 eggs in a box?
180 in a box like that. So 555 of those boxes.
That's a lot.
So you imagine like one of those boxes is like 24 inches high, right? Mm-hmm. So if you stack them like 8 feet high, so that's like 4 of them. Let's see. So let's say 550. And then
probably get like 10 across, right?
4 high.
Maybe 8 across.
And let's say 8 across, and then that's 17 deep.
That's not the huge truck.
You could get that in a Ryder truck that would hold Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's better use of the truck, too.
Way better. But it should be refrigerated because eggs need to be refrigerated.
The Nazis should be refrigerated, too, just because they move slower when they're cooked.
They're cold-blooded. Mm-hmm. Anyway, if you have information on who stole 100,000 eggs in Pennsylvania, you could keep that to yourself.
Yeah, and you could, maybe give them some...
Unless they're bad guys.
Egg dye.
Then reach out to journalists at the Baltimore
They're
Banter.
Probably going to sell them for Easter.
They've got like a mass dyeing operation. Like it's like a vats of vinegar.
A mass fish dyeing operation. Fish dye off.
Egg dyeing. Just vats of like vinegar and those little tiny tablets.
Yes. They're boiling and coloring, and then they're going to be selling them for Easter.
In those like rainbow cartons, which you sent me a picture of from Germany that was not refrigerated, which we'll talk about on the bonus.
That's right. One of the weird foods.
It's time for dog updates.
Wow.
That's made great. It. Oh, wait. Did you have an item for administrative corner?
No, I'm dropping it. It was from a year ago. It was like something that was re-reported. It was the teenager taping fish to ATMs.
Yes, that is a good story. It does resurface. People send it to me sometimes. But we covered the fish ATM story.
He's still epic. He only got in trouble because he taped 3 trout to a police cruiser. Nothing would have happened, but that really motivated the police to go find him. He also Instagrammed every single one.
Good on that kid, man. I'm on his side.
Not a difficult investigative job when the guy has an Instagram post
with like his full name as
of each fish taped.
Anyway. One more item for administrative corner that's actually administrative. Gwen Filosa and I are doing a podcast about our neighbor across the street.
You sure are.
Who I'm not calling crazy neighbor anymore because she died. She was very crazy when we knew her, but she had this like kind of wild, amazing life before she declined in her final years. And so we have been working for like months on doing reporting and interviews and finding all kinds of things out about her. It's amazing. She had a local TV show, which like we just found out about this week. We posted our first episode, so you can find it anywhere this podcast is. You can find it. It's called Unclaimed. And because her body went unclaimed. But we posted this week, like I posted it on Nextdoor, and I'm like, I know people are going to know her who have been around. And they're like, oh, I used to watch her TV show in the 80s. And I was like, what TV show? And it was like this like local access, like cable access, like you'd see an SNL skit style.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say any more. We're going to put a clip out of it at some point. I found clips of it. It just incredible stuff. And so it's a kind of like mystery oriented, but also kind of serial style, but not quite as slickly produced podcast. First episode is out. We'd released the trailer before and I talked about it, but now the whole first episode's out. And probably in the next 2 weeks, we're going to record the next episode, which will be about kind of her early life. She grew up in Florida. She went to Florida State, and then she was a professional cheerleader in Chicago for the Chicago Bears, and she founded the Chicago Bulls cheerleaders, the Lovables.
The Lovables, the Honey Bears and the Lovables.
Yeah, the Honey Bears, they don't actually exist anymore, but she just joined the squad. And then
the Lovables.
The Lovables she started, and I don't want to give all the details away. We have amazing stories. Like we've interviewed, largely Gwen actually has done the work on this, interviewed like her roommate from Chicago and like people who knew her. We have just like amazing gossip stories and incredible stuff to share. And then we're after that the episodes will be about what she did in the Keys, and there's a lot of local people who've talked to us. So if you want more podcast stuff, me and two-time Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Gwen Filosa, really elevating my podcast company. Nothing personal, Ingo, but
I'm taking it. How can I not take that personally?
You better go get a couple Pulitzer Prizes.
I have 6 dogs. She has 1.
That's fair.
He's cute, but I have 6.
I mean, I love you the most.
Oh, thanks. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. You don't have any Pulitzer Prizes, though.
That you know of.
Would I love you more if you had Pulitzer
They're
Prizes?
often given in secret.
Pulitzer Prizes equal love.
Whatever. Yes.
Okay, so that's administrative. Unclaimed is the name of the podcast, and it's got a picture of... It's got a big picture of her face and her house, and there's a smaller picture of her.
People aren't going to be searching for the picture, Jen.
I just think there's a couple podcasts called Unclaimed. They're all.
Are there
small.
really?
Yeah, I mean they're small. There's no like major one. Ours is going to be a major one, obviously.
It has your name on it. People are going to be able to find
I
it.
think so. Okay, time for dog updates. We've had like no dog time together. So I get back from
That's
Ukraine.
right. We've been handing off the dogs to each other, and they're getting real whiplash.
Like what's yeah. So I got back from Ukraine, and then Ingo left for Germany, and I was like,
and I was gone for a week, right? You were gone for about a week. I was gone for about a week. So they had a real sliding doors situation.
And I was like, I've been gone a lot, and I was like, holy fuck, Ella's feral. She's a fully feral dog.
She's a ball of impulse.
Oh my God. And it's like, this is because like we got her, and then I was like, cool, like gonna go like.
I always wanted a dog who's just like Voodoo, but physically fit.
Yeah. And like, by the way, I'm going to leave and not train her at all. So you just have 6 dogs and 3 puppies. Bye.
And me, who's not a trainer by any means.
You don't like to train anyway.
Nah.
And so she's untrained. And holy fuck, she is fully untrained. So that kind of stopped last week when you were in Germany. We've started little training. And like Zola is also like 70% feral. Like she's older, so it's not quite as impulsy. But yeah, so I was like, this shit needs to get under control. So they're like, what the fuck? Like the man lets us do whatever we want, and also he gives us more snacks.
He sure does.
So I have started little one-on-one training sessions with Ella. She's very good. She's very smart. She gets her commands well, and she just needs to learn to like not do her impulses all the time. Zola has gotten in one of my least favorite habits, which is she gets excited about stuff and she barks. And like Remy also does that, and it's why I don't like Remy as much as I possibly should. But I'm like, we cannot have this. But all the stuff I would try, like she just gets really wound up very quickly. She has poor emotional regulation.
That's true. And she does not go and put something in her mouth the way Guac does. Which
Right.
is great.
Like that was such a good solution for Guac. Because
I think Venk did it too, right? Venk would go
Yeah.
get something when she got too excited. Yeah.
Yep. Zola doesn't know how to calm herself down. And so you try, and she'll very quickly like ramp up to the barking. So like we start to feed dinner and she immediately would start barking, and then you can't get her to calm down. Like you give her a little bit of food and sometimes she won't even eat it. She just keeps barking. So it's like, I need a solution to this. And the solution was to buy a bark collar. So this is a bark collar that has 3 modes on it. Shock, which we don't use. So we only use 2 modes, beep and vibrate. So if they bark, it goes like beep, and then it goes bzzz.
It's kind of like my phone.
Yeah, it's like that kind of vibration. And I looked at like the Amazon reviews for this, and they're like, I have a husky, and like we used this for 1 day and the husky stopped barking. And I was like, okay, don't actually believe it, but okay. And it 100% worked like that. I put that thing on her. So it's like, all right, I'm going to get ready to give dinner. I put the bark collar on, and because I know she's going to bark because she's in the habit of barking at dinner. And so I start getting dinner ready, and she does 1 bark, and then it like beeps, and she's like, what the fuck? And then it vibrates. She's like, what is that thing? There's a thing touching me. 0 more barks.
Yeah.
Every time. But here's the challenge. So if you have a dog who is a barker and it's driving you crazy, let me know and I will give you a link. You don't need to use the zappy part of this. Like I said, we have that off, so there's no shocks. It's just the beep and the vibrate. Miraculous.
It's just a great distraction, and it breaks the hysteria that they have.
Yes.
Like the franticness.
That's right. It, like all of a sudden the like I'm ramping up like comes way back down. And it doesn't upset her. She doesn't freak out. She just is like, huh, like what is that? And then the barking stops. The problem, so I think if you got this thing, you could like leave it on your dog for a week, take it off when they sleep or whatever, but kind of use it for a week, and the barking problem would probably entirely go away. We can't do that because it goes off anytime a dog barks, including not Zola.
Including other dogs, browner dogs, older dogs with diabetes. Remy.
So before Zola had the collar on, and then Remy barked, and it beeped and buzzed on Zola, and she's like, for real, like what the actual fuck?
What does that sound?
And of course you can't do that because like 1, it's super unfair, but 2, it breaks it, right? Like because the training only works because they associate like when I do this behavior, there is this consequence. And if some other dog barks and they get the consequence, then they're like, well, I'm like the consequence just happens randomly. So I'm just that's not gonna stop me from barking.
No, I think she'll go over to Remy and be like, shut up. You're making me beep.
You could do that in like elementary school, right?
Or the military. It's
or
like
the military.
Everybody is responsible for this person barking.
The dogs don't learn that way though. So we have to be careful where we sort of put it on when it's a situation where like there's not another dog who's going to bark, but we know that Zola is going to bark.
Oh, and spoiler alert, I did not figure out how to do that in the 1 week. I was always one dog barking behind.
So I'm like, all right, you're not allowed to use the bark collar anymore.
Well, I kind of self-figured that out too. I'm doing more harm than good. I'm sorry, bark collar.
I have also put it on Remy. And it works on him too. Remy, who is just like an incorrigible barker.
Totally distracted him. It worked once, but then also Zola barked. And then Remy was like, now I just feel like the thing's beeping.
Yeah, the problem with Remy is that he tends to bark primarily when other dogs are wound up. And so there's a real high likelihood the other dogs are going to bark.
Yeah, I think I had him on the porch and a boat went by. And so everyone lit up and Remy just happened to have the collar on.
Yeah, I mean, he probably also was barking, but...
Yeah.
So that would be a thing where like if you had a collar that you could make do the sound and stuff with like a remote control, so it didn't do it like when they barked, but it did it when you pushed a button, that would work, but we don't have one of those. But
no, and it's the self-correcting is actually valuable because sometimes when we leave Zola in here and let the other dogs out, she starts barking
at the door,
and we'll kind of just auto bark for a while.
Yeah, she really gets wound up. and freaks herself out. So that is a thing where like we could take everybody else out. I mean, that would be like a perfect training exercise, right? Take everybody else out. Like put the collar on her first, take everybody else out. She's going to bark at the door and it'll distract her. And it like not only teaches her not to bark, but also like don't get so wound up. Like it calms her down because it doesn't let her escalate. So
friends, we will be able to do that more easily if we ever get a fence that prevents escapos. Because right now, if we take 5 out for this training exercise, there we may come back with fewer than 5.
Yes. The fence is on the way. We've ordered a fence that's going to separate the front yard from the water, and it'll have gates so they can go back to the water.
Sure.
They're just waiting for the fence to be delivered, they say. It's the keys. So that could be 6 more months. We'll see, but it's coming.
They have to invent the concept of fence first.
Speaking of which, though, Steak Neighbor is back.
This leads into another dog update subreddit, yes, which is escapos.
I mean, I will say the first one was kind of authorized because you were in Germany and you take the dog swimming every day.
I'm just saying, I wasn't here, so you have to tell this story.
Not your fault. Yes. You swim the dogs like pretty much every morning and often every evening. And I'm like, ain't nobody got time for that.
There's too much toweling. It's 2 towels per dog per swim, which means 4 loads of laundry a day.
And I am so busy right now. I do not have time to do not just the laundry, but like the swimming and the drying. You
are all getting prime Jen time. This stuff is gold. Oof. Gold. This is how much she likes you all.
It is.
She hasn't given me this much. When we're both on microphones, so I'm sneaking it in here.
Our podcasting is kind of like our most talking to each other time.
I'm catching up. I'm like, ooh, interesting. Yeah. Tell me more.
So I felt bad after like 3 days that the dogs hadn't been allowed to swim. So I was like, okay, it's like sunset. Let's go out and swim. And I had everybody except Remy and Brody. And I'm out there with them, and Steak Neighbor is like, Jen, is that you? And I was like, Steak Neighbor, hi. And so I went around the fence to talk to him, and I knew that the dogs would follow, and like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And they were all extremely excited.
That may not be an escapo. That's a visit. I think that's fair.
Yes,
yeah. If you lead, then they can follow.
It was a visit, and he was out feeding the fish, as Ingo often does, and you see in the snap sometimes, where you give him like dog food or cat food, and you throw it into the water.
I integrate the dogs into that process.
So the dogs integrated themselves, particularly Ella, into Snake Neighbor's process because he had like a 5-gallon bucket.
She integrated herself into the bucket.
And the food that he feeds the fish, which was dog or cat food, was in the bottom of it. And it was on his dock. And Ella just walks over and she's looking at it. And I was like, uh-oh, Wayne, she's going to get in that bucket. And he's like, there's just like a handful of fish food left. It's fine. And I was like, okay. And she proceeds to like knock the bucket over and then crawl into the bucket and eat.
5-gallon bucket is her size.
However much food was in there, I will say it took her a little while.
It's a big hand. It's a big hand for the handful.
So now she's like, that's the place with the food in the bucket that I'm allowed to eat out of. And so it's like 2 days later. And I began with a mistake and then I made a second one. And the first mistake is I think Guac must have snuck out with some other dog that I took out. I did not know that Guac was outside.
He can be in your blind spot and just like ghost out sometimes. Very rarely, but if he's got a mind for it.
I mean, maybe he came out and I just missed it. But somehow Guac made it over to Steak Neighbor's house unauthorized. And
he has a key to the door.
I didn't even know he was outside. And I mean, all this takes place in the course of like 2 minutes. So it was not like when Vink was over there for hours. So I had taken some dog out and we came back inside. I thought with all the dogs, but probably not with Guac, who I didn't know was out in the first place. And I went into the bathroom to fold the laundry. And all of a sudden, like all 3 puppies are at the front door crying like urgently. And
they're
I'm like,
inside wanting to get outside.
Wanting to go outside. And I'm like, oh no, like is somebody going to throw up? Like is somebody got diarrhea? Like when they cry like that, it's urgent.
Right.
So I like drop the laundry. I run to the front door, open the door, and they all bolt full speed out the front door and over to Steak Neighbor's house. And I'm like, what? Get back here!
It was a fish food emergency.
And I chased them, all 3 of them, and Guac. I'm like, where did you come? He's on the phone. like a work call.
The neighbor,
and they're
not Guac.
like,
Guac's on the phone.
No.
Guac just called them.
Guac's galloping around into the pool, out of the pool. They're all like running circles around him.
Neighbor's laughing.
Steak neighbor thinks this is like the greatest morning of his life. He's so excited.
Is so much easier than stress.
Yes, when people don't want him over there. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. He's like, this is great. Like, I am so happy. And I'm like, get back over in the house. And then like Ella's like, I'm gonna go in the water. She's like standing at the seawall, right?
From
and I'm
6
like,
foot up for 4 foot away.
Damn it! and I'm like, get back in the yard. So she like gets in the yard and then she goes to our seawall. She's like, I'm gonna do it. And I was like, don't do it. And she jumps in, and I'm like, I'm coming for you. And she like walks away. She's like, the lady can't, she knows if she stands by the seawall, I can grab her. She's like, so she just walks further. And I was like, I'm coming in. I'm coming. I splash in the water, grab her.
I haven't seen that before.
And so I get him all by the elevator because then we can bring him up to the porch and dry them.
Yeah.
But the elevator's upstairs, right?
And the elevator takes about 15 minutes. 15 minutes to get down.
Yeah, it's a legit like 90 seconds to go down.
Which is incredible.
And I'm like, you will all stay here.
It's 90 times their attention span.
Yes. And they're like, I'm going to rub them. I'm like, don't. And I'm like trying not to scream at them because like steak neighbor's outside. And I'm like, don't. No. And they're like, oh, she's using the real angry voice.
Maybe if
They
I
kinda
wander
move
a little bit.
I'd like I don't grab him hard, but I like put my hand on him. Like, you are not moving.
Yeah. And they're like, the man gives us treats when we're waiting
and
outside
like,
for the elevator.
Go.
The man
anywhere.
would have given us 3 rounds of treats by now.
Ingo and I did have a little talk to him. Like, you can't give them treats unless they're doing something.
Like looking at me waiting
No.
for the elevator.
No.
That's doing something.
No. At least then you have to be like, sit, stay. And then you have to give them treats for staying. But they have to know that they're doing a stay.
Fair.
Right?
Yeah. No, and look, I'm not, I think I was not linking, eating to performance or treats to performance.
No.
And I will start doing that. But full disclosure, I do have a vivid, full disclosure. We have a little shed outside facing the fish area that has my dog food for fish because it's much cheaper than the dog food for the dogs.
Yeah.
And I have a vivid image of Ella as a smaller puppy, almost entirely in the bag, just eating and eating and eating and eating.
Yes.
That's when we brought her to the vet, and the vet said, "Has she been eating a lot? Her stomach that I just took the X-ray of is full of dog food." And we're like, I don't know.
I was like, I know what happened.
And I think I know what happened.
I've totally thrown Ingo under the bus at the vet. So when I'm like, he's irresponsible with these dogs, and the vet's on my side. And so I had to bring CB in, which
I like the vet. I have no problem admitting that I'm holding it together with these dogs.
So I had Brody in, and I was talking to her, and she's like, yeah, this other person did a thing just like Ingo does. It was like telling me the story of this person who's like irresponsible.
What was it?
Their dogs. It wasn't that you had done that. The person had done a thing that you had done. It was more like, I asked this person to take care of this thing with the dog, and like the person kind of couldn't handle it because they got a little overwhelmed, just like Ingo does, or whatever. Like didn't enforce the rule. I don't remember what the thing was.
Giving a lot of treats is definitely.
But
what
it
Ingo
was.
does.
It was sort of like So. I have thrown you under the bus, and she's like, "Oh yeah, men do that sometimes, don't they?"
Look, the first time we went to the vet, I left without paying, so I really don't have a lot of credibility there because I thought that they had their credit card on file. They did not.
Our other vet did do that.
They just watched me walk out to the parking lot, and
Bye.
we're like, "Is he coming back?" They told me the next visit. They're like, "Yeah, we were talking about whether you come back or not."
So funny. So we did have Brody, and it was me, had Brody into the vet. So I get back from Ukraine, and I think it was like the day you left.
Yeah.
I was like helping him move around, and I noticed he was like kind of his underarms were kind of damp and like not from swimming.
Yeah.
And it kind of gunky, like that his skin had been kind of
rubbing.
Yeah, excreting some stuff. And he gets like that sometimes. And so I did what is quite a production of giving him a bath, where I like bring him in the shower. I have to like get in and shower with him.
He's passively resisting.
He can't stand up very well, and he also doesn't like it. And it takes a long time to like really get in there and shampoo and like get this it's kind of like this sticky. It'd be like kind of like if you got like gum or like molasses or something in there, where it just takes a lot of like soap and rinse and repeat to get all of it out. And so I gave him a really thorough scrub down like that and got him all clean. And the next day he was like super soft and silky and fine. And the next day at like 3:30 a.m., I think he woke up and wanted to go out. And I kind of had to help him stand up. And I was like, oh, he's damp under his arms. Like, that's not good because he hasn't been swimming. And it smells kind of weird. But it's also 3:30 in the morning. And so in the morning, like 7 o'clock, I, get up and I'm like, all right, like, let's look at this. And like his whole undercarriage, like armpit to armpit, is like a hot spot. Like it's sticky, it's oozing, it's inflamed. And then I look and like his stomach, like all the inside of his thighs, like everything has just like exploded literally overnight because I checked him the night before. And normally when that happens, it's like we shave the fur off the other spot. And I was like, it's actually everything. He needs more than spot treatment.
I just had a thought.
What?
We should probably throw away the shampoo you used to shampoo him, just because it seems like it's evil.
Well, let's get some new.
It's like the upstairs.
I think
shampoo,
I actually
right?
used all of it.
Oh,
so,
great. Well, there you
let's
go.
get a new bottle, a non-haunted new bottle.
Because he is. I mean, he's been allergic. He's never showed this allergy before, but who knows if he developed something.
Who knows?
Yeah.
So took him to the vet. The vet was great and got us in, and they shaved his
There was
entire undercarriage.
at least 2 techs that I saw in the photo.
Yeah.
It's a full-time operation.
Because I was like, he's kind of, it really, and I think the vets sometimes think that I'm exaggerating, and I am a scientist and I don't. So I'm like, literally, like everything down there kind of turned into a hot spot, and I think they're expecting like a, pancake-sized hot spot.
Right.
And so and they're like, oh yeah, and I'm like, let me just flip him over for you, and I flip him over on his back, and they're like, oh no, and I'm like, yeah. We had that
Brody.
once. My dog Kay, who I had before the squad, she, like in her last year, had this kind of infected spot. I think it was like left over from a surgery, and it was kind of like silver dollar size, but it was like constantly infected and draining. It was like quite a process for us to try to manage that. If you remember that, like in her last 6 months, it was
wearing a t-shirt a lot.
T-shirt, and we had to flush it all the time.
Yep.
And I brought her in there once, and it was under the skin at the time, and I was like, she's got an infection under the skin, and like I can see like a giant abscess under the skin. And the vet comes in, and she comes in like with this like little needle, and I was like, look, I don't want to tell you how to do your job, but I think this is maybe a bigger problem than what you think it is with that needle. And it ended up it's just like the fist-sized hole in her, and I'm like, you can't just like suck no. Yeah, we don't. You shouldn't eat when you listen to this podcast.
No.
But the explosion that happened when I was like, I think you might just want to poke that first, and
it was satisfying for you in I told you.
She almost
sort of way.
Vomited
In an I told you sort of way.
Yes, I was like, oh, definitely bigger than that little needle. So anyway, these guys, I was like, let's just look at it. And they're like, oh no. So then they took him in the back, they flipped him over, and there was this like squad of women around him.
They
like,
love
shaving
him. I mean, they think he's a big teddy bear. All the techs that know him just love him.
Powdering him.
Yeah.
And he got some antibiotics. But it took like 3 days. Like usually you put that powder on there and it's fine, but it took like 3 days for him to kind of get back to normal.
And he's still on antibiotics.
Yeah. They gave him, I think, a 2-week course.
And more sadly, he's on a no swim regime.
Yes. They're like, so the swimming, no swimming. Tell Ingo.
Look, you can't shave someone's entire body and then tell them not to swim. This is when he's going to break the record. This is it. That's why swimmers shave.
Yeah, well, that's true.
He's working on the record, and they interrupt his training
his
like
fastest.
This. His training like this. He does look so different with those long legs now.
Yeah, it's because his legs aren't shaved, but like his chest floof, like where it would hang down, is all gone. Yeah. So he looks very tall. His legs look long.
You see all the legs. It looks like walk with long legs.
Walk with 2 legs. Yeah, it is like that. So anyway, his infection's getting better, but we do want to put you guys in the headspace that CV is really on the decline.
He's an old man now.
He's taken a turn.
He's an old man.
Yes, and he's been an old man, and he's had his struggles, but but I got back from Ukraine and I was like, Ingo, like, I think I was gone for 10 days. I'm like, I can really tell a difference from before and after.
Mm-hmm.
And you were like, I can't really tell. But it's hard to tell if you're like living with it. And then you were just gone for a week and got back and you're like, ooh, I can also tell.
I mean, his back legs are weaker and less controlled. Like, imagine your legs fall asleep for some reason, and that's always the way it is, right? You can't actually feel your feet when you're walking.
Yeah.
He kind of moves them on memory, and he knows kind of where they should be, but I don't think he can feel much.
Yeah.
So it's hard. And that hasn't gone better. He may have lost some like strength back there too, and that's not great.
Yeah, and he's having accidents in his sleep.
Yeah.
Which like usually, he poops in his sleep, and we clean it up, and it's fine. But while you were gone, he had, I think, the first or second night of the antibiotics, he had diarrhea in his sleep. And Ella woke me up at like 3:30 in the morning, and I could smell. I'm like, oh, someone has pooped in the house. And then I came out, and I mean, it was like all over him, all over the floor.
Poor Brody. Poor Jen.
I mean, it's fine, right? I mean, you do this like when your dogs are in kind of their last like year or 6 months. There's a lot of this kind of thing that you just get used to. But I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is an hour project. And so I locked everybody in the bedroom so no one would like walk in it.
Everyone's like, I'll help. Let me help. Hey, can I hold the towel with my teeth?
Like, that's right. So you like clean the floor up as much as you can. First pass, shower Brody, which is, itself a half-hour process.
He just wants to sleep.
Yeah. And he can't stand up really well. Right. Yeah. And so it was all over the back of his leg. So I have to like hold him up in the shower. And like you have to wash that thoroughly, and then get him to not lay down back in it, and then scrub the floor, scrub the carpets, like get everything clean. It did take a full hour to clean it up, and like that's fine, right? Like he can still have a quality of life even if he's having accidents and it's a mess for us. But his dementia has really advanced. He's very confused. He doesn't really know what to do or like what direction to face.
Yeah, like he stands up. He's kind of. It seems like he's anxious a little bit, but he doesn't know why. And you offer him to go outside, and he's kind of like, "What do you mean?"
Yeah.
And then you push him outside, and he goes, "I guess I'm okay outside, but I don't know why I came out here." And he's a sweet, sweet boy, and he's sleeping a lot.
He sleeps pretty much all the time, and when he's awake, he absolutely doesn't know what's going on.
But if we can get him to swim again, that's like his one little joy in life. He can float around out there. If it doesn't give him hot spots.
No, he'll finish his antibiotics in a couple days, right?
Knock on wood, it was like a jellyfish or something, and it's not something that is repeated.
Yep. We'll just make sure. Like I definitely, when he'll sneak in and swim, like I don't rinse him after that. We'll just have to be more attentive.
If he's gonna be naked the whole time, it's easy to rinse. Shoop.
But he had gotten in the habit of, which I think we maybe even talked about the last time we podcasted, of like going in the water, and we were just like fine, and he was going in like multiple times a day.
The middle of the night.
And the middle of the night, but also in the middle of the day, we'd be like, yeah, fine, go ahead. And so I think he was wet a lot. So we can't let him go in
get pruny
every time that he wants,
and
right?
get pruny, yeah.
No. So we can maybe let him in once a day if we were going to thoroughly dry him.
We'll definitely keep an eye on it and phase him in slowly. But if he's cleared medically to swim, or to walk, it's such low tide right now. He's getting like knee deep.
This is a kind of classic you and me back and forth where we're not arguing with each other.
Let him swim.
But you're like, okay, but also like he could swim like this and he could also swim like this. And I'm like, we really need to be very careful about him swimming. And you're like, yeah, but he could swim like, and I'm like, he can't swim multiple times a day because they'll be wet. And you're like, but he could swim multiple times a day
because he's naked.
Like he's better, right? And I'm like, but he can't actually. And you're like, okay, but like, how about this is a reason that we could just let him do it?
That we have to be very careful.
Yeah, and I do think we need to be careful. And also, like, he can swim every couple days once every couple days. And you're like, yeah, or like multiple times a day if we like wash him and also do the thing. So we don't end up on the same page, but at least we don't fight about it.
This has not come to a rest yet for me. I'm happy to start very, very slow.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. And I'll be like, stop letting him swim and go. We're going to have to get the pig out.
The drying pig.
Yeah. We have a groomer's drying tool, and we put some googly eyes on it so it looks kind of like a pig.
It's a canister with a really long So it's a reverse shop vac, but it's much smaller.
Yeah. None of the dogs really like it, but they tolerate it more than like a blow dryer.
The only dog that liked it was St. Patrick.
Yes, he would do glamour shots with that thing.
He would throw his ears around
He loved it.
in the blowing. He thought that was very interesting, getting blown in the face.
So there you go. That's the dog updates. Everybody else is doing fine.
Yeah, except the feral twins. Feta is mostly the object of being chomped, but kind of enjoys it. Yeah.
All right. It's time for Taste of the Keys. I am going to speed us a little through the last part of this podcast because it's half an hour past dinner time and no one has woken up yet to yell at us about it.
Don't say anything.
But
You're going to ixnay on the eating A. All right.
Which I also have to go into Key West tonight, which means we'll have a couple drinks. And so that bonus pod will maybe come tipsy. At least Inga will be tipsy. I drive, so I don't drink that much.
Inga will be tipsy. Oh,
look,
yeah.
under ramblings, I guess some of this is bonus pot. I went to the Westminster Dog Show yesterday.
Yeah, well, we're not going to hear about that today because there is no time.
Putting on something.
Dogs are silently wasting away.
Yes. Okay. So Taste of the Keys this week comes from our friend, two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Gwen Filosa. And I will note that Gwen Filosa, you can subscribe to her. GF Media, Gwen Filosa Media.
Yep.
And
she has a cool logo.
She does.
Respect.
Yeah, Gwen Filosa Media. So if you want like regular Taste of the Keys, you can just follow her for free on Facebook and Instagram. But I think she does a lot on Facebook. And she like does live streaming of stuff, and then she